Welcome to Milo's Mods, ladies and gentlemen. So this is another episode of Blaster Chat. Today's topic is Etsy. You guys are going to say, wow, Mr. Salmon, that's something really unusual to talk about. Well, the long and the short of it is, this blaster here, this is just an example of one of the blasters I've gotten off of Etsy. I've gotten all kinds of blasters off of Etsy over the years. You know, I got this blaster. I got my first 3D printed blaster off of Etsy, which was a Caliburn. Okay, so the thing about Etsy is that it used to be a relatively inexpensive site to buy blasters from. Such as, you used to be able to buy a Caliburn for about $150 already assembled, ready to go from Captain Slug. Back in the day, and that's including shipping. That's great, you know. Magnificent, stupendous. Well, about sometime within 2023, 2024, because I don't buy from Etsy a lot, the blasters started to get really expensive on there. Such as the average cost of a blaster, or at least in my opinion, anything decent, will run you about $200. Keep that in mind. That figure, $200. Okay, so most of the blasters I was seeing, they're running anywhere between $200 to $250 or more for 3D printed blasters. Well, in my opinion, that's a little high. So I asked a bunch of the small-time shops on Etsy, what gives? Why? And why so much? And I got a variety of answers, but the one main answer that I got from all the shop owners that I polled, and keep in mind, I polled a wide variety of shop owners on Etsy, it's the fees that Etsy charges. Okay, on, let's say, a $200 ticket, which would be something like this, okay? Let's say on a $200 ticket, by the time you pay the creator, okay, let's say I bought a Lynx or something like that, you know, and so you have to pay Dan his 10% right off the top. Well, that's $20 off of a $200 ticket. So then by the time that you also pay the 15% fees, yes, that's right, 15% to Etsy, instead of that ticket being $200, you're only bringing in $150 because that $50 goes between paying the creator and paying the Etsy fees. I mean, so that's $50 gone. And then by the time that the shop pays for the hardware that it uses, the filament, the electricity to run the printers, blah, 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 you know, they're not making very much off of it. And they're still not making much. But what has happened is that because when Etsy raised their fees, and now they're charging 15% or more in some cases, one guy told me he saw a quote as high as 30% on the fees. And again, I don't understand any of that, or most any of that. The only thing I know is if a company's charging more fees, that means that eventually the smaller shops are going to have to pass the expense on to the consumer. That's why we're seeing higher prices now from Etsy, because Etsy's being greedy with their fees, for lack of better terms. And I mean, the way I look at it is that me personally, if I'm going to buy a blaster from somebody on Etsy and I know them personally, I'll message them. And I'll ask them, hey, do you want me to give the money to you, or do you want me to go through Etsy and you lose 15%? And depends on what they are, depending on what they feel like saying or whatever is what I do. You know, either way, it doesn't bother me that much. You know, because I would rather see the shop owner get the most amount of profits out of it, because, in my opinion, smaller shop owners are the backbone of this community, for lack of better terms. You know, because things like this, things like the SBM, things like Lynxes and stuff like that, you know, those are all done by smaller shops usually. And well, that's just it. The smaller shops are suffering the most because of Etsy raising their fees. Some of the bigger shops are going to be okay with it, but some of the smaller ones are really suffering, and it's not good. I mean, I don't, I'm I'm not saying just totally go around Etsy, but try to look out for the shop owner if you can when you buy from them. There's some shop owners on Etsy I won't buy from at all. There's a couple that I will. It just depends on who they are, what they're selling, if I really want to buy or not. I normally don't buy many 3D printed blasters, as you guys can tell. Usually my stuff is on injection molded, so I really wouldn't use Etsy. It is what it is. But for you guys to actually use Etsy though, and you guys and you're paying higher price and you're wondering why, it's because Etsy raised fees. That's all it is. And granted, I think 15% is a little steep. I'm thinking maybe 10% would be reasonable. But I'm not the person that runs that type of stuff, But in any event, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and listening to my explanation on why blasters on Etsy have all of a sudden gotten so expensive. Well, thank you so much for watching, as I said, and until next time, this is Miller's Mods signing off.